I was a board member for the first 5 years, president of North and South America. So, you're going to find that this guy sounds like he's very enthusiastic about clusters. And since I have a short time, we're going to move along. That every one of my words, I can talk for a week, literally. He knows that. In my slides is precise, and it means a lot. Economy is everyone's business. Everyone, far more than anyone in this room can imagine. Okay, and it's a long-term plan. I'm an angel, no wings, but I'm an angel. And you look for 5-year return, 10x, and all that kind of nonsense stuff like that. Is not a cluster. In 1992, when we formed, somebody else formed the cluster. We're looking for a plan for the 21st century. So 10 years out. So don't think that this is going to happen. You're going to evaluate this in a year or 2 years. We have outlived 4 governors and that kind of stuff. So it takes time. What happened is Allen Held, a businessman, in 89 to 92, Arizona was in the depths of recession, that kind of stuff. And so he raised with his buddies, he's micro-age Fortune 500 software company, and paid Stanford Research $180,000, and the state said, hey, we better come up with some money, $130,000. I had nothing to do with this. I didn't know what a cluster was. So he started it, and they formed 8 clusters, and optics wasn't one of them. So that's fine. Somebody at the university said, hey, we have this nascent cluster, so you can start stuff if you've got the material to work from. We weren't a cluster, we weren't organized and that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, Alan eventually calls me up and says, Bob, I want you to do this. We're going to make a cluster. I can remember looking at the phone saying, you've got to be out of your mind. I'm a company. I got to run Breault Research. I'm not going to run any goddamn economic. I had no inclination, and I kept backtracking until June of '92. I had an epiphany and understood the magnificence of the triple helix, the bonding of economic development people, presidents of countries, prime ministers, mayors, people who come in to help a company start, the educational system, from ministers of education down to 10-year-olds, and companies, from the Raytheon, Boeing, Bendixes to one-person companies. And so we incorporated the cluster with the intention of outliving A-Speed, G-Speed, and all these kind of things. And we have. And I believe that 1,000 years from now, this is going to be one of the things that we are still going to have some remnant of the cluster concept, which is that important to us. Arizona has multiple clusters, and you don't normally hear that. Don't choose winners. The multiple clusters, these are my friends, and all of these kind of things we compete. Sometimes I try something that doesn't work. They try the same thing and it works. God dang, what'd you do different? And, so we collaborate across that. And then one thing that is almost never brought up at cluster meetings is economic foundations. How many of you have ever had a goldfish? What happened to it? Okay, and so the same thing, the clusters, the goldfish, the foundations are those things, the fish tank, the water, the filter, the charcoal, the heater, and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't have that, and if you don't maintain it, the goldfish dies. So if you lose interest, as Kristen brought up, how do you keep them going for 21 years? It's because you nurture them, you clean the tank, you filter the tank, you feed the fish. And human resources, these are not ideas, these are not concepts. These are 30, 40, there were like 80 organizations in capital. Some were debt and equity, some were debt and some were equity. And my chief financial officer would go to one and I'd go to the other. And they sit down and they say, what does the cluster need? Okay, and so from that end of it, it's very, very important. So if you grow the clusters and they get stronger, they feed the foundations, the banks, the transportation, the education system, all this kind of stuff. They get stronger, they feed the clusters. It is a vital cycle. It exists in your community whether you like it or not. That's the reality of it. If you don't nurture it, if you don't interact with it, it functions, but it doesn't function well. We talk about collaboration. I mean everybody, and few of you people in this world will understand what I mean by everybody. Yeah, venture capitalists, legislatures, professionals, automobile dealers, Tucson Gas and Electric, real estate people, insurance. And you say, wait a minute, what in the heck are you involving those people for? If they benefit, because I put in 1,500 hours a year in economic development in clusters, I go right up to them and say, Jim, click, ante up, $25,000. You benefit, you sell cars, you sell houses, there's no free ride. So everybody, I twist their arm and I embarrass them and I do it publicly. So these are the things where, and you involve students, that, students understand what we don't. It's been a long time since I've been in high school, and just last week I listened to a bunch of high school students around all of Tucson, and they have great ideas and they tell us such a thing. Sir, how do you expect us to pass these STEM tests and all these kind of tests that the government gives us, and we don't have a qualified math teacher in our high school? Duh. So they know what it is like that. And we're not big. Small, medium-sized companies, we lead. And this is the optics cluster. We have 19 on the average, 7 in medium, and 19 and 7 in the average. We have 309 companies. And I'll show you what we can do. Small companies, you hear this, these are some statistics, it is in the small, medium-sized companies. If Raytheon leaves town, oh my God, it's a disaster. If I leave town, there goes 40 people, and we try to keep. Sometimes companies fail. There's death in a cluster, and what we try to do is keep the people. Death in a cluster, I compete with my cluster members, and those that are not healthy, they die, and that's okay, because it's just trying to save everybody who ever lived. Death is inevitable, so we try to keep that. But 1995. Christian and his buddies at Harvard, in Germany, and my regional people, and my own company, my own cluster, wondered, what in the world are you doing, Bob Breault? You're creating an optics cluster in Florida, one in Massachusetts, one in Pennsylvania, several of them in Germany and Scotland and stuff like that. Co-opetition. If I can compete and cooperate with people 25 minutes away from me in the greater Tucson area, I don't give a dang if they're Chinese, Soviets, Germans, or whatever. The potential customers, the potential knowledge bases to me. So I started doing that, and they started talking about macroeconomics at the government, microeconomics, the business, and mesoeconomics, the clusters linking macro to meso, to micro. And they said, Bob, at Harvard they're talking about meta-economics, and that's you. We don't know whether you're right or wrong. This is 1995. You're going around doing this global, co-opetition stuff. You could be the czar of all the optics, or you can beat the daylights out so another optics cluster starts. Today, Christian will tell you, clustering clusters is the norm. So we're a rebel. We break those rules. And this is the growth. 30 clusters pay off. And this was 1996 to 2006. We've gone from 236 million to 2.3 billion, from 2,300 employees to over 25,000 employees on our own. No regional money, no state money, no federal money. $10,000 a year. Anybody want to put in $100,000 and get $2 billion back in 10 years? Raise your hand. Yeah, raise them, buddies. And so that's what a cluster is about. And that's over multiple. About every 3 years, we have this financial test of how we're doing. I don't want to do one now. And then last slide is, it's not about giving companies. Never. I'm adamant about the government not giving any of my cluster companies money, contracts, or whatever. That is building the infrastructure, build the roads, build the direct flights, lower, the trade barriers to you. I'm on ETRAC, Emerging Technology Research Advisory Committee under the Secretary, and we have just lowered the boom and changed our export regulations. So you build those building blocks, and I can grow. I'm from Arizona, in the desert. I got the sunshine. I don't have the water. You give me the rain and the water, and I can have 4 crops a year. The same kind of thing for the government. You do that nurturing, we can do it. And it's like, and I'll end with this. Imagine if every one of you was a virtuoso, the piano, Yasa Heifetz on the, violin and that kind of stuff. And if you started playing, I said play, people would be in here shutting you down, telling you to get out. But if we get sheet music, the cluster, and a conductor, then the people in this town would pay $100 to come see you. That's what a cluster does. It's the sheet music and it's the conductor. Thank you very much.